It is now 3 o'clock. I would like to call the Richland County Detention Center Ad Hoc Committee meeting to order for July 16, 2024. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Pugh,
Here.
Walker, English.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I did talk to Councilman Overture Walker. He's going to join us virtually for this meeting. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda is approval of minutes from May 21st, 2024.
There are no corrections.
Second. Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Walker. I do see him. There it is. Councilman Walker, are you in favor of the approval of the minutes? Motion approved.
Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Mr. Brown, is there any changes or deletions?
No recommended changes, sir.
All right. All right.
No changes, sir.
Move to approve.
All right. It's been second. It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item number 4 on the agenda is items for discussion and action. Mr. Brown, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the purposes of our discussion on today, all the items that are listed under A and B are for discussion. We do not anticipate any requesting of any action on these items. But with that being said, we have prepared a presentation, Mr. Chair, and so we'll ask the clerk to put their presentation up. And there are a number of slides, but we will flow them rather quickly. And that's mainly because a lot of this information we have shared, but we wanted to articulate more plainly for those who have not seen it before, what the information looks like. And so this is basically a status update related to the detention center, broken down really into 4 sections: recruitment and retention, infrastructure updates, security updates, and other updates under item A. And so we'll move to the next slide. And you see those status updates listed there. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, if I move too fast, just please tell me to slow down, sir.
Yes, sir.
What you have here, we have our communications initiatives. Our department has submitted several opportunities to engage the public and letting them know that we have ample opportunity for employment here at Richland County at the detention center. Those are the different ways that we've done it. And just briefly, I'll let you hear, if you haven't heard this either through one of the streaming platforms, what are we saying to folks about an opportunity to work at Alvin S. Glenn? So, Madam Clerk.
Looking to begin or advance your career in law enforcement? Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center in Columbia, South Carolina is currently hiring for full-time detention center officers. New hires are eligible to receive $5,000 in bonus pay, plus an additional $5,000 after their first year of service. Candidates must be at least 21 years old to apply, possess a high school diploma or GED equivalent, and have a valid South Carolina driver's license. Don't miss out on this rewarding opportunity. Apply online today at richlandcountysc.gov.
So if you've either driven around the community, you've been watching one of your streaming platforms, or you've been looking on your social media, you may have seen us pop up across you a couple of times. And so just want to take a quick moment to say thank you to our communications department for putting this out in a number of different ways to make sure people are aware that we are hiring and we do still have available positions, and I certainly encourage anyone to apply today that wishes to work for Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. Next slide talks about our recruitment.
Looking to begin or advance your career in law enforcement?
That's okay. You can roll it again. No, the next slide is really just a quick snapshot. You can see it talks about Q4 of 2023 up to Q3 of 2024. And you can't see it right down at the bottom because of the way the wording is. There you go. But you can see over that time frame, this is just a snapshot. You can see that we were able to bring in 64 hires. And at the same time, through a number of different reasons, you can see the number of folks that left our employment. So some of those things could have been, opportunities that they saw at other places. Some of them could have been steps we had to take related to their employment at Richland County. Next slide, please. This next slide talks about infrastructure updates. And again, I'm going to be very brief here. The first one is our kitchen renovation project. You may recall that was one of our earlier projects, and that roughly was about $700,000, and that was completed. Many of you walked through that and had a chance to see that. The next slide shows our renovation process of the behavioral management unit. Again, all of the steps that went through that process. For those of you who have seen it, which the majority of you have, you know that the finished product doesn't really tell the story of all the different things that had to be done to renovate those units, but this is an example of what that looks like. The next slide shows the renovation of our Yankee unit. And again, for those who haven't been able to visit the facility, meaning the outside persons, they might not realize exactly how much work goes into renovating a detention center environment. It is not akin to renovating your home. It's a lot more work that goes into it, a lot more coordination because of the level of security and the requirements of the types of materials that we have to have in there. And so moving on to the next one, we show the housing unit for X-ray. Again, another housing unit. Yes, we are renovating all of the housing units, and we will try to get to them as fast as possible. We actually have, if you've seen here, multiple contractors that are working in the facility, helping us to renovate these units. And those renovations, as you see here, include everything from doors to lighting to electrical to plumbing. Just to the common areas within the facility, the locks that we talked about before. And I'll just take a pause and just tell you that we are 75% complete on those locks. There are only 2 remaining units that don't have the locks complete, and each of those units have 56 locks in them. So only 2 units represent the remaining 25% that's left to be completed. The next slide shows the Papa housing unit. Again, I know that some of these things are repetitive, but the idea is to make sure that individuals who are unaware or uninformed about the level of detail that is being done in the facility have a better understanding rather than hearing things that are not necessarily accurate. So again, the next unit shows the golf housing unit. And a lot of these units are similar, and if you recall, as when you walk through there and how they're laid out, and some of them have a little difference in them. But all of these units will be renovated. And moving on, the next is the India housing unit. Again, similarly situated. These units generally take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to complete. And we're talking about somewhere between $1 million to $1.5 million for these renovations. So it is something very significant. Moving on to the next area of infrastructure update.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
With the refurbishing of these units, all of them are going through the makeover of replacing the sinks and adding the locks to the doors. What is actually going on in those particular units?
Absolutely. So back up just for one example. So if you take a look, and if you allow me, Mr. Chair, to answer your question,
sure.
Utilizing the slide. So all of the units are going to have interior changes to them. That includes cleaning, prepping, sanding, and repairing all the interior walls, in the common areas, in the cells, in all the areas in the housing unit. There will be new cell doors that will have the windows, if you recall looking at them, those are being changed out and upfitted with cuff ports on all the cells. In addition to that, you're talking about the ceilings in the facility completely being renovated. In addition to that, you're talking about the securities within the walls to allow us to provide the conduit to the new locks that have to be put in there. If you remember, our locks used to be pneumatic locks. That is a term for saying they were used air to push the lock to open it. So now we actually have electrical locks. So that means we had to go through that cement wall, put the wiring in there to allow it to send electricity. So those locks are now electrical locks. So all those units will have the updated electrical locks. In addition to that, you have the clean and refurbishing of the HVAC systems. As you see here, the recreation courtyard, the fencing inside the courtyard, the surfaces there themselves and the walls. You have the construction of the new guard station within the units. And then you have the catwalk, which if you recall seeing that, you have the catwalk itself being, there are, how can I say it, partitions that are kind of like fences that go up to almost ceiling height to help reduce anyone who may, for whatever reason, decide they might want to try to leap from one floor to the next floor to reduce the opportunity to do that. So all the units have that similar change happening in them throughout the entirety of the unit as well as within the individual cells.
So, Mr. Brown, in a nutshell, we will be, once these units are finished, they will look like the finished product from the behavior management unit that we visited once you guys finish?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Does any of my colleagues have any questions? Well, sorry. First of all, let me first thank my colleagues, Councilman Don Weaver for joining us, as well as Councilwoman Gretchen Barron for joining us, as well as our fabulous chair, Jessica Mackey, for joining us this afternoon for our ad hoc committee meeting. Thank y'all for coming. Can anybody got any questions? Okay. Ms. Barron.
So, Mr. Brown, you mentioned we're moving to electrical locks, and I know we've talked about this a couple of times, but this just hit me, I guess because it's thundering outside, and that is, in the case of an electrical outage, or if we don't have any power, what is the backup plan for those locks?
So, good question, but let's talk about the backup to the backup. So the backup to the backup is we have backup power. So we're not just dependent on the grid power that comes through the normal electrical process. We have a backup generator. Well, Mr. Brown, what happens if the backup goes out? The locks do still have traditional old school key turns with them. So we still will have access to get people in and out to move out the facility. It'll just be a slower move because you would have to go to each unit or each area and use an actual physical key.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. So we're going to move past the India housing unit because all those housing units are the same. Here we talk about upfitting our medical area. And here I just point out that in that area, these are doing a lot our infrastructure upgrades where we basically added the ability to have better separation from detainees who are seeking medical treatment. So if you think about yourself and you're going to the hospital or an emergency room or triage, you go in, you sit in there with anyone that's in there. The only difference may be they may have a section that says this is for not sick people, this is for people that are sick. Well, in a detention environment, because individuals may have different classifications, they may have different reasons why they're being housed in the facility, everyone can't just go sit in the room together. Like ideally we are sitting right now. And so as a result of that, we had to create a space where individuals could sit and wait to be helped for medical needs, but at the same time, secure from one another to prevent anyone moving around as they should not be. As well to give our nurses there a safer feeling. We also see there's a panic door release to the rear door in case of fire. Those were upfits to the medical area. The next section really covers security updates. And you may say, well, does infrastructure and securities are really that different? There are some similarities, but we put them here because infrastructure-wise, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the idea was that these are the fundamental compliance areas in where we have to house individuals. And then the security areas is kind of like, they may be areas where members of the public, whether it's entering to the facility, like the lobby renovation that we've done here, or maybe you're moving through other areas of the facility, you're an attorney or someone else that's visiting. So I kind of put that under security updates rather than just infrastructure, but some of them have similar overlap. So for those of you who walked right in, you may remember what the lobby looked like before, and if you don't, the lobby looks great now. So it is an update to the lobby, and this is what was done. And so we'll move on from there, Mr. Chair, make sure we give time for other questions that might come up. So the next slide is the exterior security lighting. So if you've been out to Alvarez Glen Detention Center some time ago, just like many of our infrastructure that are older in our community, the lighting did not reflect the most up-to-date opportunities with LED lighting. So the county went back out, we put additional lighting and increased newer, modern lighting out into the facility to make it brighter, so that when you're out there at nighttime, it is not so dark. So that's something that we did, and you can see that we replaced all of the exterior lighting with LED lighting. And again, a lot of that requires not only just changing light bulbs, but it requires wiring for older equipment that may not have been ready to handle that load. Let's move on to the next slide. We did have, and we still do have, a fence that was out there, but we also went and put a additional security reinforcement inside the perimeter of the fence. This particular type of fencing, if you go out and look at it, then it makes it difficult for someone to cut the fencing like you could do maybe a traditional, kind of iron or steel fencing. So that particular reinforcement is designed to prevent people from being able to cut it. So it is unlikely that you would have someone, if they were able to exit the secure facility, they could not exit the perimeter of the fencing because it's the lines are so tight that you hard to put your fingers in them to scale, nor could you cut them. So it is an additional upgrade to the fencing that we put around, and that was installed and is in place now. If we move on to the next slide. We talked about this before, and we won't go into a lot of details because I don't want to get into where and all they will be, but we are doing a facility-wide security system related to modernizing our cameras within the facility. We've talked about that, and that process is something that is underway for the entire facility. Next slide, please. One of the things that we talked about was what happens when attorneys need to come out and visit with their clients. Currently today, as you and I sit here, the attorneys have to enter into a secure space within the infrastructure, and that's not ideal for us. The only people that we want entering into a securing housing structure are the folks who are designed to be there. So by creating this attorney visitation center, you would allow security to maintain at all times. You have detainees who will be entering from one side, totally separate apart from contacting anyone in the public, and then you would have the public or the attorneys entering from another side. So there's never overlap, there's never need for them to go into a housing unit, and so the safety by itself gets maximally increased just because of that. But also the environment in which the detainees and their attorneys need to meet in will be upgraded compared to what we have now. So you will have secure visitation opportunities. There will be opportunities for them to, if they need to have contact visits with their attorneys, they can have that. But everything will be safer for both the detainees and the attorneys who will need to visit them. And that project is on the way. And so the estimated completion date for that is February of next year. A few more slides here, Mr. Chair. Outside in the parking lot area, from time to time, you may have individuals, if you recall, when they're released, they're basically released just right out into, to get out like anyone else. Once you're released and you're fine. And while we haven't had a whole host of issues recently, we have had incidences where individuals who are released because there's general open access to county vehicles, employee vehicles, individuals who have taken the opportunity to do damage. And so we want to create an environment where there's a perimeter where if you're visiting the facility, you have access to visit the facility that's different from employee or law enforcement access. And so that's what this project is, and that's something else that is underway. The next slide represents our fire system repair. And again, this is just making sure that all of our compliance needs related to fire are continually maintained and updated in the facility. And the last updates are under other updates, and they just list upcoming projects. So again, these represent all the units that will be updated going forward, as well as any other areas of the facility that we'll be addressing in the future. And then the next slide. just shows you some of the additional steps that the team has taken to additionally address improvements at the facility, whether that's their weekly walkthroughs with the command and supporting staff, whether that's the establishment of the new Department Strategic Operations Team, where they look at the policies and the information within the facility to make sure they're taking appropriate steps, whether it's the Directors Roundtable, where frontline staff have the opportunity to meet with the director. All of these are additional just updates as to what's going on to be making improvements at the facility. The last two slides, I'll spend just a quick moment here, if you can minimize that. So what you have here, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, is our attempt to initially address some of the feedback that we got from the committee and members of council saying, can we get some more numbers? Can we learn a little bit more detail about, what's the inner workings of the facility as it relates to detainees? And so what you see here is a snapshot of the population at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. And what I really want to point out more so than anything else is when you take a look at that first adult population summary and you drop down where it says charge and encode, you see it says 30-day intervals and 60-day intervals. And in your mind, you're probably asking, does that mean that this is how long these individuals have been in the facility awaiting a trial? And the answer to your question is yes, that's what that means. So as you look at this, and you're looking down, it shows you the number of individuals that we're housing at the facility right now at this snapshot in time. And it gives you a general idea of how long they've been there awaiting the judicial process to take their turn in it. The next slide will give you a little bit more insight to what I mean. And this is just an example. So these are examples of individuals who are detained in our facility and the types of charges that they have as to why they're being detained. And you may say, well, Mr. Brown, how does this help us? We've asked you for information. Well, one of the ways you can look at this, you can break it down and say it shows you a category of individuals that are charged with violent-related crimes, and then you see another host of crimes that are necessarily not considered violent crimes in and of themselves. And then you can take a look and see, for example, if you look at violent charges and you go all the way out to 366 plus, what you're seeing there is that in that column, there are over 191 individuals awaiting trial who are being charged with a violent crime, which means that in our short-term detention facility, we are housing individuals, and that 191, 366 plus doesn't mean that's just a year. That could be 2 years, that could be 3 years. So you have individuals who are in our facility who should be able to go through the judicial system and get in and out and be, sentenced or released, whatever the case may be, who are sitting at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. And if you just say, well, what is the amount of time that you would like to get an idea of how many individuals we're seeing like this? If you were to just drop back and take a look at starting at the 28 number and then going forward, you would just add those up and see these are the number of individuals that have been there for 6 months or more awaiting a trial. So when you say, well, what can we do to affect this? What we try to do is share information with the appropriate parties to let them know, because not blaming everything on these individuals, but when you have individuals who've been there for a number of years, who have time and who are shown a propensity to tear things up, they're the repeat offenders who damage the brand new stuff that we put in there. So we definitely think it's important for us to make sure that we're continuing to work with our internal partners to tell them about ways that they can help us focus on problem individuals who are awaiting their day in court, but who are still sitting at the detention center waiting on a trial for a number of years. So move on to the next slide, please. So that will conclude Section A. Under the presentation, Mr. Chair, we're certainly taking any questions before we move on to B.
Thank you. I appreciate all the hard work, and I know we've been talking about this, and it's more of a statement, but also a question. And that is, I would kind of like for you to speak to our commitment of the upkeep. I know we've talked about it before, but once we've done all these wonderful, expensive renovations, to just kind of reshare with the with the citizens what our plans are, if you can remember that far back.
So I can tell you that overall, the county, including Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, we have began to put aside funding for all capital projects that we complete to make sure that we can maintain those capital projects that we complete. And that is a strategic initiative of this body, and that is how the staff has moved forward. So all of these items that are being renovated, there is funding for the upkeep of those items. The only thing that I would add to that is, while we have backups, the idea is not that the upkeep means that as individuals tear up the facility, that's not the same thing as maintenance. And so there's a difference for us between upkeep and then responding to individuals who do not actually value the housing units that they are in or the other resources that are provided to them by the detention center.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That's been really important to me, and that's one of the things that I take a lot of pride in. And I have to quote our chair, we didn't break it, but it's our responsibility to fix it. And we want to make sure that it stays presentable for years to come. And my last question is the DJJ update, moving those.
Absolutely. And so what I'll do is, we do have Director Harvey, who is here. So if you will, Mr. Chair, if you will recognize him, we can talk about the steps that we've taken since given the approval by council with the juvenile facility.
Director Harvey, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, committee, for once again being in your presence. Yes, Councilwoman English, we have aggressively been speaking with DJJ leadership and having a smooth transition plan with sending the kids over to them. Effective August the 1st, we will stop receiving new kids, but November the 1st would be the transition of our kids to their secure facility. So we're giving them enough time to adjust, to see what the influx is going to look like, and to make the appropriate action.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Councilman Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Brown, I did have one question. I was surprised at the number of inmates that have been there 366 days plus. That's a pretty high percentage. My question is, are they all from Richland County charges? Are they inmates from other counties, from the state? And do we recoup that expense? If it's like a state charge, do we recoup the money from the state, or how does that work? Or are these all Richland County charges?
So that's a very good question. And again, allow me to have Director Harvey to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Director Harvey, you recognize, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, they're all Richland County, what I call Richland County babies. They're our babies, yes.
Okay, so there's no recoupment of costs from any other entity,
No, sir.
unfortunately. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Director Harvey, by the way, for the very warm welcome that y'all extended to me when I came out there for your Employee Appreciation Day.
The staff love you.
Very, very much appreciated, so.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Brown, I want to say thank you for all the hard work that you've been doing. I've been watching this unfold for a few years here now, and we've gone from, you're a jail expert now.
Well, don't say that too much, Mr. Pugh. They'll have me speaking in a different way if you say that kind of stuff.
But I appreciate the hard work and effort that you and your team have been doing. Director Harvey, thank you for all the hard work and the leadership that you guys have been putting forth as well. And I just appreciate y'all. Anybody got anything else? If not, number 5 is adjournment.
Well, Mr. Pugh, we actually have item B
Oh, I'm sorry.
and C.
Oh, you went so smooth, Mr.
Yes,
Brown.
sir.
I thought you was done.
Yes, sir. And if I could, and
Yes, sir.
if you didn't want me to do this, you can slap me on the wrist later. But thank you for working with us in DJJ. Thank you for creating a pathway for us to have a conversation to provide them an opportunity to go through the process that we were going through and give them time and space to adjust the decision that we were made. So we appreciate the connections that you made in making sure that that could happen. So thank you. The next item is the discussion related to a new detention facility. So we spent the first roughly 20 or so minutes talking about renovations to Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. And the reason why I think it's important to have a conversation about a new detention facility, one of the strategic initiatives that we talk about under establishing operational excellence is addressing not only current needs, but future resource needs. And our facility is, currently close to the capacity that is able to hold. In addition to that, we just can't renovate ourselves out of what is not a great operational structure for our organization. If you'll give me just a little bit of leeway, Mr. Chair, when I was growing up, when I was of age to understand, my parents told me that you don't want to go to jail, that jail is a place that's restrictive. You don't get a chance to make the same choices that you make when you're not in jail. You don't go to sleep when you want to. You don't wake up when you want to. You don't necessarily get to eat what you want. You don't get to make requests for certain things as it relates to amenities. That jail is a place that you don't want to go to because it restricts you from doing the things you might want to do. So make good decisions so that you don't find yourself in that situation. And I bring that up because as we talk about a new detention facility, I don't know if necessarily, the world has changed and how they look at, providing resources as a jail, but people have different thoughts about what should be in a jail. And that's something that, as we talk about addressing, space needs, because we actually have more staff now than there was anticipated in the facility, so we don't have general space for the staff that we have. There are resources that we need to put into the facility to keep up with the modern technology to be a better provider just operationally, to be more excellent at what we do. You can't renovate yourself into that because of the structure that we currently have. And so some of those things are just some of the questions that kind of go into what does that look like for our community going forward? What does the structure that the community sees being of need? And so those are some of the questions, that I think I have, but I'm bringing the idea of a new facility because we are outgrowing the space that we currently have, and we're unable to address the modern needs into the future, trying to renovate just the space that we have. So I think it was important to start having a conversation, to plan. This is a strategic conversation to plan for what this may look like in the future. And no one necessarily asked me, but I thought that item 5 under B, that we've had a number of individuals who have weighed in to provide feedback or input concerning detention centers. And I thought it would be good for potentially at some future time, if you so thought, members of the committee, to maybe stand up or make a recommendation to council to stand up a stakeholder committee to help you walk through that process, to help you figure out what that may look like. So whether that's law enforcement, whether that's the coroner, medical individuals, mental health individuals, the solicitor's office, the public defender's office, mental health, all of those types of individuals, to then allow them to provide you with information, provide you as a committee with what that may need to look like, and then as appropriate, we see what those costs may look like, and kind of go from there. So those are just, general thoughts as we, talk about the future. There is no action being requested. There is no action required this afternoon. But strategically, I thought it was important for us to begin to navigate that space because, we are, as you saw in the document I provided you today, you're talking about 1,057 individuals, at least at a point in time, when we're a 1,100 capacity facility. So those are some of the reasons for the future discussion. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly we'll listen to any feedback the committee has, but again, I'm not requesting any action on this afternoon. I just want to, plant that seed because we talked about being strategic, and this council has been strategic, and you depend on your team of your staff to let you know. And so this is me letting you know kind of an idea of a next step related to future facility needs at Alvarez Glen Detention Center, separate and apart from renovations.
Anybody have any questions or concerns? Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
So if there is no other information that you all want to share or provide feedback on related to item B, the next item is actually item C, which is a personnel matter, which will require executive session. And it would be should be a brief executive session, but that would be the only other remaining item.
Move for executive session.
Second. Ma'am, it's been moved and properly seconded for us to go into executive session. Could you call for the vote, please?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
We are now in executive session. Right. I entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker, English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chair, with items A, B, and C being covered, there is no additional information to present on this afternoon.
Questions or concerns before we move on to item number 5? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion for, I'd like to entertain a motion for item number 5, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Madam Clerk, it's been moved and properly seconded. Can you call for the vote, please?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker, English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, we are adjourned.